There you go. We are live.
Just moments away from kicking off.
Yes. It's 8:30 here right now, right on time. So
Right.
let's get started.
Let's
Yeah.
get started then. Okay, great. So, good morning, good evening, everyone, whoever is joining in to this episode of the podcast. And to begin with, even before we introduce ourselves, I want to mention this number. It is podcast number 27 for us, episode number 27 for us
Yes.
in our series of podcasts, and it's also an important number for us today. you know
Yes.
it is to give the context on why 27 is important today. It is the median working capital runway for an Indian MSME.
Wow.
So in other words, if every rupee of new revenue stopped flowing in tomorrow morning for any MSME, the typical small business in India here is going to be on only for 27 days. It is going to have only cash reserves only for 27 days to cover salaries, raw materials, their taxes, interests, etc. That's it. 27. So it's, I want everyone listening in, joining in right now to pay attention to this number 27, not just because it's our 27th episode, but that's what the amount of money that you are going to have if you were to stop your revenue today and just depend on what you have in the bank. So just think about that.
A good one. Good. Like
So,
you brought up a good point. I never imagined. Oh man, it is 27, and yes, our titles also say 27. And that the part is genuinely scary. Shantanu, for me, is like most of us don't know that number.
right.
About their own business. They know the revenue, they know their gross margin, they know their cash flow, but their CA tells them net profit at the end of the year. But they
Mm,
have never calculated how many days they are from zero.
from zero, exactly. Anyway, so welcome to this episode of our podcast series where strategy meets execution. We'll go through the introductions quickly for those who don't know us yet. Um, So my name is Shantanu Kilkar. I am a founder and principal consultant at 1.618 Business Consulting. I've spent about 22 years working with automation MNCs like Emerson Process Management and Honeywell, and been focusing on, apart from the grounds up engineering stuff, the majority part of my later career has been spent uh, on managing the strategy function for in these companies. And since I founded my own consultancy a couple of years back, I've been focusing on issues related to MSMEs, small and medium businesses, everything from their growth strategy, planning, down to execution. And as part of this podcast series, along with my colleague here, we take on pertinent topics, important topics that impact SMBs in their day-to-day operations. And our effort here is to not solve them on these episodes, on these discussions, but throw some light, ignite a kind of a conversation around those topics so that together we can develop towards progress towards the solutions that most SMBs are in dire need of today. Right. So Aniket, over to you. Let's kick it off
Sure.
on.
Thank you, Shantanu. Absolute pleasure to be here and sharing this stage with you. For the folks who don't know me, I'm Aniket Vaksore, 15 plus years of experience in primarily in US, but I did spend couple years in India working in Kirloskar also before I came here, US. I did work in Cummins for 11, 12 years, where actually I started as a design engineer and grew up the ladder all the way to the operation leader, managing teams of around 20. Did have some impact on their financial statements, basically saving some cost around $3.5 million in operational savings by improving their processes as well as making some process efficiencies improvement specifically to their Six Sigma related processes. And then I did work in Amazon for around 3.5 years, where I did work on some automating some robot warehouses uh, in primarily North America, uh, and also led some team supply chain team also there. And before I transitioned to this current role, where I'm a senior project manager consultant, where I'm actually responsible for automating a manufacturing line for a pharmaceutical company here in US. But yeah, I'm most excited about today's topic with Shantanu. Uh, that what are the real pain points and what is the significance of this 27 days. So let's
Mm.
dive into the topic without losing any more precious time of ours.
Right.
So go ahead. Yeah,
Okay. So, before we get into the pitfalls of what what the 27 days to zero means for that, for our listeners, for the SMBs. Aniket, on the previous slide, I think we have mentioned three important numbers. So,
yeah,
yeah, right. So here you are. Just right at the top.
yeah,
Uh, we want our listeners to delve upon a couple of these numbers that we have mentioned. The first one, 7.34 lakh crore. That's the amount of money that is currently locked in delayed receivables owed to Indian MSMEs, to Indian small and medium micro businesses. And that's not uh, just a number that we have pulled out of thin air. It is a number coming from a proper study that the uh, the Federation of Indian Small Medium Enterprises and the GAME Association and C2FO, these their joint report, it states, which was published last year, that is where this number comes from. It This amount of money, our money, or the MSME money, is sitting in someone else's balance sheet, is sitting in someone else's accounts because they haven't paid the companies on time. So
yeah.
that's that's the scale of the issue that we are talking about here.
100%, 100%. And I mean, just to put that number in perspective, right?
Mm,
Uh, that's bigger than the entire annual budget allocation to the Ministry of MSME
mm,
by a factor of roughly 30 times. That's the scale of working capital problem hiding inside Indian small business right now.
and it is a big issue. So this number gives it some good quantification and perspective, but you see that talking to MSMEs and SMBs day in day out, receivables is a big issue for them. So
Absolutely.
moving on, the second number that we want to highlight here is the 5 to 10% range. Now that is the percent operating margin that MSMEs are working on today. That's the typical MSME's profit margin, which means they don't have much buffer. A 10% cost shock, or the let's say the freight rises by 15%. You see the volatility in the markets today. Even a 10 to 15% shock, it could be your key buyer who has delayed payments by another 30 days from what they are today. Any of these shocks can wipe out your entire operating margin for the quarter,
Yeah,
not just reduce it, but completely wipe it out to bring it to zero. So
yeah,
that's how the thin line or the margins that they are looking at.
correct. And this is why the cash flow conversion is so critical in India specifically. Let's say suppose a US small business might run at 20% margin, right? And I think the European one at 15, but Indian MSMEs are running a sprint on 5% margin with no cash buffer and payment cycles that have stretched by a like very thin margin. So in some sectors to 120 days, to be precise. That's not a. I think it's not a business problem. That's a structural vulnerability. What do you think, Shantanu?
It is, it is. And we'll go through the details on why it's not a business problem, because a lot of systems that in which these businesses run do have safeguards against this. So they do try to safeguard the working capital for MSMEs, but it's not being used properly. So we'll come to the details. But let's look at the third number here, which is 7.16 crore. That's the number of MSMEs that are registered on the Udyam portal. That's the central government's portal for giving out registrations for
Correct.
small and medium businesses. So the people listening to this episode are, which are the MSMEs. They are not a niche. They are not a small group whose issues can be just ignored or glossed over. They are the backbone of the Indian economy.
Absolutely.
They contribute to nearly 30% of India's GDP, and they give 31 crore plus jobs. So they contribute to half of India's export. So it's not a small group we are talking about. It's not some small corner of the massive Indian economy that we are talking about. This is the Indian economy in other words. Yeah.
And which is
Mhm.
why we do this for free, right?
Exactly.
All right, let's go to the next slide. Profitability. What
Right. So here's the trap that most Indian SMEs are falling into, and as I said, I have seen this literally with every company, every owner that we speak to during our work. Mention this. So what they see on their books when their PNL is viewed, their CA, they show them a good PNL, a beautiful PNL at the end of the year. Let's say the revenue is up by 12% year on year, the gross margin is holding at 22%, net profit is positive, so you are in the green zone. Everything on that printout is green. Everything is growing, everything is looks healthy. And then the, that brings out that feel good factor for the owner. But then here's what the CA is not showing you.
forward?
And it's not because it's not their job to show you that. The PNL is a backward looking statement.
Correct.
It tells you what has already happened. It doesn't tell you what is about to happen. So when you take an operator's view and the view your business actually runs on,
Correct.
that is the forward looking uh, view, and that looks completely different.
Yeah, yeah. And for our SMBs, right? Let me make this concrete. Same business, same year, but now three different numbers. The first number is days sales outstanding. That's around 95 days, up from 60. That means the average invoice you raise is sitting unpaid for over 3 months. And these numbers, just keep it in mind, these are all the average number for all the over aggregate for aggregate economy of India, right? A year ago, that number, the 95 days, it was 2 months. That deterioration in is invisible now on the P&L because revenue still gets booked when you raise the invoice, but the cash is not coming in. That's a big problem. And that's why your cash flow statements looks really horrible. The number two, right? Top three buyer concentration, 54% of the revenue. So more than half of everything you make depends on only two or three relationships.
Hmm.
So look at that, like consider that as a, like, how much concentration you have in the customer. If any one of them actually renegotiate the terms or delays payments or walks out for whatever reason, you have a crisis in a week, not in months, in a week. Number three, working capital runway, right? 27 days, which is where the title of this series comes from. You are right now less than a month of cash from zero. Your PNL does not show that, period.
Exactly. And as I said, that is what we mean by just profitable on paper, paper
Yeah,
tigers as they call it. The tally printout at the end of the month or end of the quarter or the year, that closes beautifully,
true.
but the bank balance tells a completely different story. And the operator's view or the operator's dashboard that we spoke about, that is what denotes the gap between the two, between what you appear on paper and what your bank statement actually says.
Correct, correct. And I want to give listeners one concrete action they can take this week from this slide. Open your bank accounts portal right now, mentally at least, right? And look at the last 90 days statements, right? Forever, for every major customer, write down what did they actually pay, not what the invoice said, what did they actually pay, what the bank statement shows. And I promise you, the first time you do this exercise, you'll find one or two buyers who have quietly stretched you by 30 days and you had no idea,
Yeah,
right?
and that's the starting line really. If you don't know your real days outstanding,
Correct,
not the DSOs that your CA is putting in the documents, but the one that your bank statement is actually showing. If you don't know that, then you're essentially flying blind. You don't know where you are headed. So that's the importance of just these three numbers that Aniket you spoke about.
correct. Let's move on to the next
See,
slide, the
yeah,
pulse framework, which is very important. Yeah,
right.
go ahead.
So when we say that if your the PNL is lying to you, what should you be watching? If what your paper PNL shows you is not the truth, or there is more to it than what is shown in the paper, what is it really? So this is where we come up with this framework that we call the Pulse framework, PULSE.
Yeah,
It's simple, it's straightforward. You just need to know these five things to understand, to diagnose where the problem is, and also to then work on the specific areas of the problem. And the reason why we call it the pulse is because you need to check on it as frequently or as you would do on a pulse. Uh, Not just health wise, the pulse that you know that the doctors check, but even in your business, uh, you, you call your regular reviews of the business as pulsing the business. And
correct.
it has to be done on a regular basis, not an annual basis at the end of the
Very well said.
fiscal year or calendar year, whatever you are following. It has to be done on a weekly basis, and it doesn't take long. Just take 10 minutes, and it tells you these five areas of your business that are in the red zone right now. Any of these could be in the red zone, and as soon as you detect them, you are on to a solution. Detecting the problem is half the solution. So just follow. Let's go through the framework
Sure. So
in
let
more
me
detail.
walk through this five letters. The first one is the payment. P stands for payment cycle. The MSMED Act of 2006, it does mandate a 45-day payment window for MSMEs. Most of your buyers are ignoring it, right? In manufacturing sector, I know, I mean, network incumbents, and I've seen that like auto components and ceramics, they are seeing payment cycles stretch to 100 and 120 days routinely. Can you believe it? And it is a fact. I've seen that if your DSO is rising faster than your revenue, then that payment P, the letter P, payment cycle, is in red. Period. The next one is the U, stands for utilization drift. This one is very subtle. It's the quiet capacity you are paying for but not using. Basically, plant running at 60% of nameplate, right? People are spending 40% of their week on rework. A SaaS license where you bought 50 seats and 20 are active, right? Only so 30 are unused. We
Mm.
see roughly 30% idle capacity hiding in every MSME we diagnose. 30%. Remember that. That's your margin sitting at idle. You're not utilizing it. Okay. So we cover P, we cover U. Now comes L, leadership bench. This is the most uncomfortable letter for most owners. Basically, this 80% of Indian family-owned businesses, they fail at succession. Only 21% have a documented succession plan, uh, which rather means 4 out of 5 family businesses, they are one unexpected event, a health issue, a next gen decision to exit, or a founder burnout from being permanently damaged. So
Mm,
it's a serious problem to me. The next one is the S, stands for sales engine. This is also a huge one for India specifically. Only 13% of
mm,
Indian MSMEs use digital marketing in any meaningful way possible. 70% of that, 70, still get their heads from trade fairs, referrals,
mm,
and founders' personal network, not otherwise. Which means your growth is not owned, it's rented from your network only. So the day your network stops producing, your growth is stopping. Period. Okay, think about that. The next one, which is the last one, is the employee output, which is, we call it as a hidden tax. A bad hire in an MSMEs cost 3 to 4 times their annual salary. Can you believe it?
mm.
And we did cover this topic, Shantanu, if you remember, in last
In
podcast.
yeah, correct.
And this is a big problem. Like hiring a good talent is the skill gap is a real issue. But hiring a bad talent, it really costs you, and it adds up. Recruitment cost, lost output, ramp time, and team disruptions, and whatsoever. So uh, most MSMEs, they might hire reactively, train through a bad buddy system, and have no 30, 60, 90-day scorecard for new people. So what
Mm,
happens? The revenue per employee, that metrics just, you know ramp down, and that tells you if this is a problem. If it is flat for 2 years, the revenue per employee, which means the headcount, while headcount is growing, you have an E problem, which is employee
yeah.
output.
Now that's a great overview, Aniket. So, what we want our listeners to understand is this is not just a framework
Correct.
to, you know, it's not something that we have just come up with an acronym for you to
Yeah.
for to break it down for you to work upon. It's really a diagnostic tool. A framework is going to tell you what to do. This is a step before that. It's going to tell you where to look for the problem,
How
right?
to prioritize? Yeah.
Correct. So most MSMEs that at least we deal with, uh, they are not aware of the problem, or where to look for the problem. That's the problem for them. They are not aware of the problem in the first place. So they can't see which of these five is actually bleeding them. And with this approach, with the pulse approach, this is really the stethoscope. As we said, it's a diagnostic tool. Once you know which of these letters is in the red zone, you will know where to start.
Correct.
That's the point
Correct.
of this.
And yeah, go ahead.
Now that, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And one practical note for SMBs, you can do this pulse read in just about 10 minutes on your Friday evening, based on if you are capturing the good KPIs data, right? Tally gives you a DSO, Dale Sales Outstanding. HR
Mm,
gives you a revenue per employee, and your calendar tells you how many decisions still routed through you this week. You don't need a consultant like us. And even don't need a software. You just need a right KPIs to be measured, and just 10 minutes honestly. That's it.
beautiful.
Okay,
So it's interesting that you mentioned, you know, looking at this on a Friday, because this slide, the next one, yes, this one is what we are calling the Friday test. It's one of
yes,
my favorite slides as well, because this is the simplest and most uncomfortable at the same time way to diagnose the
correct,
problems. The question is that we want to raise here, and we want every listener, every business owner to think about, is if you vanish this Friday 5 p.m. this week, on a Friday at 5 p.m. you decide that I just want to go incognito. I don't
correct.
I want to disappear. I don't want to be seen for the next 72 hours. I won't be attending any phone calls. I won't respond to any emails. I not There won't be anything coming from, no signal from my end for the next 72 hours. If you decide to do that, what area or what in your business is dead by Monday at 9 a.m.? So that's how, if you think about it, it's a real test of what are the resilient areas in your business and what are not. It's
Absolutely.
called the Friday
Very well
test.
said. And for SMBs out there, you might be thinking, oh, we are being too dramatic. Well, to be honest, this is actually how you measure the fragility of an Indian MSMEs. Okay, because the honest answer for most owner for this is a lot. It's
Right.
fragile, a lot. So keep that in
It
mind.
is. Yeah. So, if you look at the timeline that we have put here,
Yes,
there are five things that we most commonly see that typically fail in that 72-hour window of the owner's absence. So if you look at the timeline in detail, let's assume that as I said, you stop being the owner of the company for 72 hours. You stop being that on a Friday at 5 p.m. In the first 8 hours, so by the time Friday night wears on, the customer payment chase stalls. The first thing that typically gets impacted is you are the person who is making those calls to the customers' CFOs, asking them for payments, asking them for what's due to you. And if you don't do that, and your team doesn't feel authorized to push, to take those decisions, to make those calls on your behalf, then that payment is not going to come in. That It's not going to come in on the next Monday morning. It comes maybe 2 days later, maybe 3 days later, or even next month. So that's the first thing that gets impacted as soon as you are not overseeing that task. 18 hours in, Saturday morning, a key buyer escalation hits. Something broke, and something is delayed, something is not delivered. Something's wrong in that process, and the buyer WhatsApp you. You have decided not to respond to emails or messages. Your team knows that this issue is there, but again, they are not carrying the authority to commit to a resolution. Okay, so that by Monday, even that relationship has taken a hit that you took maybe 5 years, 10 years to build to this level, right? So that's the second thing that to get impacted. 36 hours in, let's say Sunday evening, the GST filing deadline is slipping by. Your CA has been following up with you for 3 days. Again, you haven't had the time, or in this case, you have gone into incognito. You have not responded to that, not provided your approvals. And Monday morning, by the time it comes, there is already a late fee on your GST payments.
yeah,
50, 54 hours into your, as we call, quote unquote sannyas from the business. Monday afternoon, it could be a supplier credit line which doesn't get renewed. The supplier's finance head has been calling you since Monday morning and asking for your sign off. Again, you're not there. He moves on. By Tuesday, you have a credit hold on your wrong team, and then 3 days in to your so-called sannyas, your banker calls about your working capital, and you're supposed to be on the call, you're supposed to be attending that, responding to your banker's call, but you are not. Again, by the next day or a day or two, your banker has flagged your account as a relationship issue. It has gone into a red zone for the bank. So it's again a cascading effect. In just 72 hours from the time you stopped being you as the owner of the business, all these things have happened.
correct. And every one of these is preventable, right, Chandru? None of them require you
Yeah,
to be one
exactly.
None of them required you to be one doing the work. They require you to be the one making the decision actually. And that's the diagnosis, right? There are three categories of dependencies that we found that cause this. They are listed at the bottom of this slide. If you look at it, first one is the authority checkpoints. Basically,
Mhm.
every discount over a certain amount, every check over a certain amount, every refund or every hiring decision for that matter, it still routes to you, right? You haven't set the decision thresholds and delegated anything meaningfully. Second one is relationship checkpoints. Your top three buyers will only deal with you personally. Your banker trusts you, not your CFO. So your biggest supplier negotiates only with you, and these are the hidden succession risk. When you actually, something happens to you or you go on out like on vacation or something, it's a single point dependency, right? When you sell the business or retire or these relationships don't transfer, what happens? They break, right? The next one is the knowledge choke points. Basically, I call it as a real killer because the vendor rates, buying specific payment terms, the GST quirks for your industry specifically. Uh, uh, those the workaround you use when the ERP is down, all of all, all of it basically, it lives in your head, but there is no like a proper documentation or a SOP, right? Uh, it's present there and it's not in a system, in your head. What does what happens there? If you are creating a single point of failure, right?
Exactly.
So think about all
And
these points. Yeah,
yeah, and if you look at the number that we have put at the bottom of the slide there, that's exactly what it leads to. You
correct,
know, 80% of Indian MSMEs, they are they most of them, one, they are family owned, they are not professionally managed, and 80% of these companies, they are failing at succession planning. Only 20% odd have a documented succession plan, which means if you're listening to this and if you're one of those, uh, you have not run the Friday test on yourselves, statistically you are in that 79-80% who have not thought through this scenario, who have not done this scenario building. So here's what we recommend you do. Literally tomorrow, or whenever your Friday comes, write down the list of things that will stop working if you are not there,
correct,
and actually write it down. Not just think about it, but actually write it down. What decisions, what escalations, or what approvals uh, would be hitting your desk in that time frame, that your team member or your delegates are not able to handle.
correct.
So that is actually going to be your delegation roadmap then. So this is sort of, as I said, the business resilience project.
Yeah,
Once you have that list, you can work on those areas and build a more resilient business which can run in spite of your absence.
correct. All right, let's look into the risk matrix.
Right. Yeah. All right. So I think this is really the meat of the whole discussion. Probably the heaviest slide in the deck. Um, we are going to go deeper into uh, each of these pitfalls. It's what we are calling a risk matrix. Each of the five pitfalls, the pulse pitfalls that we earlier spoke about, uh, we are going to look at what is the signal. How does it look like? When can you say that I really have a problem in this particular area? What tells you that? How does it break your business or the processes? And then the last column, that's the crucial one, is what is specifically so Indian about the risk, right? I think again we wanted to bring that out very emphatically in this case.
Yes, you know very well. And I want to stress this slide also that there is a lot of generic MSME advice floating around there, right? Basically, recycled American small business system 10. It's like basically dollar swapped for rupee. But what actually works for US does not work for India, right? We know that. Well, the Indian operating environment is structurally different. Regulatory levels are different, banker relationships, family business dynamics, digital infrastructure, and whatnot. All like subsets of that. So every now and then in this matrix has one column dedicated to what's specifically Indian about this risk. So let's go through them one by one, Chandru.
All right, yes. So first row, payment cycles. Again, the data signal, the indicator here is your DSOs have stretched from 60 days to let's say uh, 95 days. 7.34 lakhs, that's the number that we mentioned earlier. That is the amount of rupees or the amount of money that's stuck in delayed MSME payments nationally, overall in India. So the indication is that your DSOs are increasing. Then how does it break the business? Your working capital dries up. You're forced to borrow from banks, from NBFCs at not small, but 16 to 24% interest rates. That's how high the interest rates are if you are trying to pick up money in moments of distress. Your margins, which are already at 5 to 10%, as we saw earlier, they get just eaten alive by the interest rates that you are charged on such loans. So uh, this is just a vicious cycle that you get into. And then the India specific issue in this case is that this is the single most underused tool in the Indian MSME owners toolkit, right? So as I said earlier, there are things, there are safeguards in the system against these pitfalls. But then either the MSMEs don't know them or they don't know how to use them. This is a case in point. Section 43BH of the Income Tax Act. It was enacted, enforced from fiscal year 24-25. Under this section, if a buyer doesn't pay an MSME within the specified timeline that's in the Act, enshrined in the Act, that's 45 days, it is given there, um, that the buyer has to pay an MSME vendor within 45 days. And if they don't do that, they lose tax reduction on that expense. Okay, so let's say a big company like L&T is buying from you. You are a vendor to L&T. If they are not paying you your dues in 45 days, L&T cannot claim that expense as a tax reduction. It doesn't sit in their PBT, the profit before or income before tax. So, which means every day that they are delaying, it's actually costing them more money on their corporate tax liability. So,
Correct.
it's something that the MSMEs don't realize at all.
Very pertinent point, Chandru. And then most MSME owners have never ever mentioned this section to their buyers.
Correct.
And maybe they are not aware of that this is the leverage you're not using. A polite email from your CA to your buyer's CFO citing this 430 BH of the Income Tax Act is often enough to accelerate the payment by 30 days.
Exactly. So it's an underutilized tool. Now the next one, the utilization drifts. So the signal in this case, um, how can you see the signs, as they say? Let's say the plant at your production um, capital, that's running at, let's say, 60 to or 70% of the nameplate capacity. The SaaS license, if you're in the subscription business, um, if that is paid for, it is 30 to 40% unused, right? So those are some of the signals that you can look at. You could be in a production environment, you could be in a services environment, a software environment. You need to look at those utilization signals to see if the issue lies in this area or not. How does it impact your business? Again, your fixed cost gets absorbed by the shrinking productive output. You're paying for a full factory and running it at two-thirds of the capacity, let's say, or you're paying for the software and no one is using it. So those are how things are going to impact you in the business. Now, what is the India specific thing here is that only 23% of Indian MSMEs are what researchers call the advanced digital maturity phase, you know, which means that they have moved beyond basic payments and ERP into, let's say, autonomous or AI driven, analytics driven data decision or decision making processes. 43% are stuck at the basic level of digitization. They have a cloud ERP and they accept, let's say, UPI payments, but nothing more than that. And that's where most of the MSMEs today are, 43%. And that middle zone, the basic digital phase with no advanced layer, is the least efficient place to be in. So you have paid for your entire infrastructure, but you're not extracting the leverage out of that. That's
Correct.
uh, that's where you're getting hit the most.
Absolutely. Very well said. So the row three is that is the leadership bench. Uh, Basically, the signal. I mean, signal. There is the owner in every decision, right? Next generation either unready or uninterested. They are not. They don't care about that. So, and the other is also no. We don't have any documented SOPs,
Mm,
standard operating procedure. And how it breaks is your scale is permanently kept at your own bandwidth. And if you ever want to raise institutional capital or sell or bring in strategic partner, the buyer or investor is going to take one look at the key person risk and
mm,
apply a 30 to 50% discount to your valuation. So that is a like think about that because I know a lot of SMEs they do want to raise capital by offering more equity in their business, but when they see a single key person dependency risk, your valuation may get affected. Next one is Indian specific 80% succession failure rate, right? We mentioned that earlier in the slide. 21% have a documented plan and 80% failure rate overall. That was the McKinsey analysis of Indian family owned enterprises. And the reason why it matters right now, right this decade, to be precise, is that India is about to go through the largest, I said, largest generational transition in MSME ownership in its history. Period. So, founder who built a post-liberalization economy in the 90s are in their 60s or 70s. They are almost retiring right now, right? Or have retired. Their businesses are worth the money, and transition is coming whether you are planned for it or not.
um, yeah, the change is always going to be there. That's the
Correct.
very constant. All right. So the fourth row here, sales engine. The signal that you want to look out for is, let's say, 70% or majority of your leads are coming from referrals or trade fairs, and only 13% of MSMEs today they are using tools apart from these two media that I mentioned. Uh, Only 13% are using, let's say, digital marketing, for example. So they are capturing leads beyond just uh, people who they know or people who they meet at trade fairs. So how it breaks, again, how does it impact your business is the your growth stalls the moment your founder network saturates.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah.
you have never measured customer acquisition cost or customer lifetime value. You have no way to know which customers are actually profitable. So you have not looked at your customer base or your network in a systemic manner, in a systematic manner. And as soon as your network saturates, your growth also stagnates. And that's how it impacts you. Now, the India specific thing in this case is Uh, the Indian government has platforms like the GEM platform, GEM platform, or the ONDC that they have opened for MSMEs. It's the government marketplace that does now. I think it has reached over 5 lakh crore worth of merchandise being traded there. It has ONDC has about 5 lakh registered sellers. 70% or more of those companies are MSMEs, and these are real actual channels, right? These things exist today, but the key issue is the onboarding friction. The documentation that is needed, the GST integration. Uh, you also need to follow a particular process or a discipline to list yourselves on these platforms, and that's where most MSMEs are failing. Anyone who is not progressive enough to look at these options, they are not using them as effectively as they should be. Uh, Meaning there is a genuine opportunity cost
True.
for every week that you are not on that platform, every
Yes.
week that you have not built your digital sales channel. You are losing out on that large access to the customer base.
Yep. So let's look at the row 5, employee output, right? Signal over there is training through the buddy system. We discussed that earlier. Basically, new people learn by shadowing someone, right? No role scorecards. Revenue per employee has been flat or for 2 to 3 years, or maybe more. And while the headcount keeps growing, that is the signal. But how it breaks is bad hires cost you 3 to 4 times their salary. 80% of the actually uh, 80% of the employee report uh, their onboarding was very poor.
Mm.
So, which means basically every good hire you make are underperforming because you didn't vet them properly. And that's a India specific, I would say, risk. Particularly in this case, is MSME talent market in tier two or tier three cities have become brutally competitive. Large firms like Infosys, TCS, startup owners, they're hiring crazy from the same pools that used to be the supply. So the attrition to larger firms have accelerated, which means for MSMEs outside the Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi corridor, that talent has become a first order strategic risk, not just an HR issue.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's the matrix, the risk matrix as we are calling it. Five pitfalls, five signals, indicators that you can look out for, and five India-specific risks that are carried as part of this. So even if you don't take anything else back from this episode, do pay attention and do take away that particular slide, because once you have diagnosed where the problem is, as we said, that's half the way towards the solution, and
Correct,
you have actually done much more than what your competitors are doing, even if you are just identifying those issues.
100%. All right. So let's look into this. Is our favorite slide all the time, right? 30, 60, 90-day plan.
30, 60.
Uh, so you run a pulse framework. Right? You run the Friday test. You rate the risk matrix. Two or three of the pitfalls are read. Now what? You will be asking, now what, right? This is where the most strategy content falls apart. Big on the problem, small or plan. So we build this specific 90-day sequence, three phases, day 0 to 30, stabilize days 30 to to 60, second month, and then systematize. Basically, you're creating a process, durable process in the 16 to 90 days, and then scale. So let's go through
Yeah.
this, Chandru.
Yeah, so let's go through that quickly. I know we are also coming up top of the hour, but uh, the first phase, if you look at days 0 to 30, as Aniket you mentioned, that's the stabilize phase. The goal here is to do the diagnosis and stop the bleeding. That's the first
Yes.
aid that you can provide to your business. There's no big bets here, no hyperbole here, just visibility and triage. So there are five specific moves that we have shortlisted here that you can take. The first one is building a 13-week rolling cash forecast. Every week updated. It's not a budget; it's a forecast, right? And that gives you a runway number we spoke about on the very first slide, 27 days, if you remember. So that gives you that number. What is your runway? It is the forward looking number that you need to have on your fingertips. Then step two is pull your top 20 account receivables overdues. For the worst three of those, the ones that are more than 60 or 90 or 100 days late, invoke that particular section, 43BH that we spoke about of the MSME app, and your CA can draft a note to the buyer on the customer side, and pursue them to get those receivables back to you. Step three, audit the last 14 days of the decisions that you have made, that you have personally taken. Every single one. Just write down in the last 14 days what decisions have you taken, and for each of them, mark whether they were strategic only, which means that were they entirely dependent on you, were you the only person who could have taken that decision, or could you have delegated it to someone else, right? So list those decisions and actions down and create a delegation list from that. Step four, interview 10 customers, actual customers, not just an anonymous survey, but real one-to-one conversations with them. What Ask them what do they value the most about you or your business, and what's working for them, what's not working for them, what are their areas of frustration, and if it is that bad, what are the reasons that they would leave. So that way is going to give you the ideal customer profile. And then the last one, pick one SOP gap. So the most painful process in your business right now, pick that and fix it. The first 30 days, just focus on fixing that one particular process, not 10 processes, not everything that is an issue. Although you know that there are issues in other processes too, just pick one. um, let's say code to cash or hiring or GST filing, and document it. Train the team to solve these issues even in your absence, and then move on. Set the process and move on. That's
Yes.
what you do in the first 30 days.
Yeah. And the next second month, right? 30 to 60 days. What you need to focus is systematize, right? Systematize. Basically, you are installing a new rhythm. So the one basically is onboard the trades. We covered this trades, right? The trade receivable discounting system. Basically, the RBI lowered the eligibility threshold to 250 crore rupees turnover, which means more MSMEs are eligible than realize it. So discount your top three overdue invoices through trades. You get paid in 2 days instead of 90. Use that trade system. That's your biggest beneficiary. To get cash in hand from your top invoices, uh, top three overdue invoices. Second one is delegate to 2 to 3 decision types to your managers or your subordinates with written thresholds, not verbal, but just written thresholds. So you can say that, like, hey Anand can approve discounts up to 3% without my sign off. Above 3%, come to me. That's a decision rule, and that's a delegation, and that's your team. Use your judgment is not a delegation; it's a abdication. Okay. So number three is launch a weekly leadership review. You can have a same day, same time every week, non-negotiable. Track your top five KPIs. A cash position that we mentioned earlier, DSO, daily sales outstanding, output, then a customer acquisition cost, CAC, then attrition. 20 minutes, that's it. Just no excuse for that. team has to report on you on that, and it's not a status update meeting. It is a decision meeting. Period. Number four, a pilot one, basically a digital channel beyond reference.
Mm.
It's not five channels. It is one ONDC. If you are in goods, WhatsApp business. If you are in services, a gem. If you can sell to government, just pick one. Give it 90 days. That's it, right? It could be ONDC, gem, or whatever. WhatsApp business. Choose that service and give it 90 days. The last one, fifth one is a write in 30, 60, 90-day onboarding template for your next hire. Before you hire, you have to write this in. I mean, if you can't write what good looks like at day 30, 60, or 90, you're not ready to hire. So you need to have that plan for every new hire. What does the 30, 60, 90-day plan look like? What are your expectations from that role? And so that you can, evaluate their performance.
Correct, correct. Exactly. Now, at the end of 60 days, I think you're primed up for the the jump. You're
Yes.
primed up for the big leap, which is coming through the next phase of 30 days, 60 to 90. That's the scale. So that is where you have, loaded your gun, and it's now time to pull the trigger in a way. So the first step in that is institutionalize your monthly cash council in a way. Um, just spend 15 minutes at the end of every month. Your senior finance people, your operations manager, review that 13-week forecast that you have set up in that first phase. Scenario the downside plan. So what if the DSO stretches beyond, let's say, 15 days, or by another 15 days? What if a key buyer delays? Build those scenarios and institutionalize that process, and as part of this particular phase. Then formalize the second one. The formalize your managers, KROs or OKRs, objectives and key result areas here. Do that. You have to have those quarterly. What are the objectives and result areas? Have a quarterly uh, template, and that is this is the part where people usually skip that. They reduce your own operational meetings by 40%. If you do this, your operational meetings are going to go down by 40%. You don't have to spend that much time into managing these things if you have a proper formal way of putting those KROs in place. Right. So free up your calendar based on these and just start delegating out into this particular formal process. Third step is double down on your highest ROI customer segment.
Yes.
So retire the lowest, apply the 80/20 Pareto efficiency tool on this. Most MSMEs, they carry a very long tail of unprofitable customers because uh, they they feel that that is where their customer loyalty or customer retention is coming from. Now, which customer
Correct.
loyalty or retention is good, but
Uh-huh.
then it's a decision that should be based on business sense and not just emotions, not a moral one. If that customer is really bleeding you by not paying you on time, then they are in that bottom 20%, which you should be doing away with. Right. Step four, scale up using whichever digital platform that has worked for you in the middle phase that Aniket spoke about. You can draft a sort of an year-long digital roadmap with a budget attached to that. Most MSMEs don't fail at digital because they tried the wrong thing. They failed because they did three pilots in parallel and none of them got good enough oxygen. So again, don't put your bets on more than one thing. Just focus on one and get that going. And then the last one is track your quality of your hires.
Yes.
Start building an internal bench for uh, the key roles that you have in the organization. Again, not a succession plan for each and every role or for the whole organization. That's going to be a big project, that's going to be a big task.
Yes.
But pick two roles that are critical to you, maybe in your immediate layer of execution, and two roles that you can't afford to lose. Just do a succession planning for them in this particular phase.
Yes. Just watching on time, I think we are almost 1 hour. So I don't know, shall we cover this ROI slide, or let's, or maybe there is another slide here. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Uh, there is survival is designed, but it's like a summary slide. So I'll let you choose which one you want to cover finally before we end up.
Yeah, I think the ROI slide is most of the numbers that we,
Correct. Okay.
that we have already
Let's go through that
mentioned.
one quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it's probably giving a quantification in terms of numbers, in terms of money, to everything that we have spoke about. That's the ROI framework in a way. Um, Illustratively, for example, for 50 crore revenue, let's say you are a company with 50 crore turnover. You're an MSME at 50 crore turnover, operating at 6% margins, right? So essentially, you are making 3 crore net profit on your business. So that's your reference business. Let's take that and then look at these numbers from that perspective.
Correct. And before we get into these numbers, these are the illustratives. Your mileage actually will vary. Sector does matter, and the geography in which geography you are in, that also matters. The execution discipline matters most of all. So the numbers are grounded. Let me walk through them one by one.
Mm.
The payment cycle fix, right? 85 lakh rupee annually. That's a huge number. How do we get there? A 50 crore MSME with 60% of the revenue on credit terms is carrying roughly 30 crore of receivables at any given moment. And you can shave those 20 days of DSO, days
Mm.
sales outstanding, which is what the trades plus section 430 BH plus discipline collections will do. And you release roughly 1.7 crore of working capital. 1.7 crore of working capital. Okay. So the interest saving plus faster deployment of that cash back into the business is conservatively 85 lakh.
Mm.
That's the usual. I mean, that's also a substantial number to work with.
Absolutely.
The utilization drift fix, right? 60 lakh annually. So 10 percentage points of that capacity utilization recovered that we talked about, moving from 65% to 75% on plant, people, and software, typically returns 1 to 2, 3% of your annual revenue directly. So 60 lakh is the middle of that range.
Mm.
Okay. Then there comes the next number, sales engine fix. Basically, it is 45 lakh annually. So if you think shifting every even 20% of a new customer acquisition from an expensive um, founder dependent channels to a digital marketing channel, it can reduce your CAC by roughly half of that portion. And that brings up like 45 lakh in the net effect. That's that's also adds to your profit number.
Mm.
Employee output fix 35 lakh annually. So basically, what you're doing is reducing a bad hire, cutting a ramp time with the proper onboarding processes, lifting revenue per employee by even 5%. A 35 lakh is actually conservative for a 50-person business. Next one is a leadership bench fix. That also gives out around 30 lakh annually. It's harder to quantify in a 1 year basis because the value is mostly in evaluation of clip at exit, basically, and not in a your profit and loss statements. But the day-to-day productivity gain from a founder who's finally working on the business instead of in it, that does save you a 30 lakh in your rough estimate.
Exactly. So, if you add these up, the 30 lakhs from leadership bench, 35 lakhs from employee output, so on and so forth, it adds up to the first number that we have here, 2 crore 55 lakh rupees in annual recoverable value. So, as we said, if our benchmark MSME is worth 50 crore turnover at 6% margins, this 2.55 crore is roughly 5% of revenue returned to the bottom line. So that's the number that we want every listener to delve upon. um, this is actually almost double the profit that you are making, and you're doubling your profit not just by or not by investing in a new product or expanding into a new market which carries its own investment requirements with it, but you're doing this just by fixing the operational drag that's already in the business. So you don't have to do anything different here. You just have to do the things differently, as they say. Excellence is coming from that, and you're just doubling your profit by doing these things.
Very well said. So, two other numbers on the slide worth calling out, Shantanu. Payback period,
Yeah.
that's less than 90 days. Most of these interventions, DSO tightening up, SOP documentation, decision delegation, that we covered already. Those payback were inside the first quarter, and you are not making a 10-year bet on that. Okay, these are
Hmm.
easily fixable problems. You're making a 90-day bet that pays back inside the investment window. The second one is the valuation uplift, basically 1.5 to 2.5 times. Um, that is the hidden price that you are going to unlock. If you ever sell the business, raise institutional capital, or bring in your strategic partner, fund your initiatives or your business, structured documented MSME trades are at, like, it's really helpful in meaningful. It does give you a meaningfully higher multiple than a founder dependent equivalent. Remember that. And a business doing 3 crore of EBITDA that's entirely founder dependent might trade at 3 to 4 times. The same business, documented and structured, and trades at around 6 to 8 times. So look at that, 3 to 4 times to 6 to 8 times, which is huge jump. That's your exit valuation of flip. All right.
Exactly. Of course, the these numbers, the caveat that we want to put out there is
Yeah.
these are not guaranteed numbers. These are
Yeah.
potential or possible numbers, and obviously they require the execution discipline through the 30, 60, 90-day plan that we spoke about. And even if you skip the some of the steps in between, then you are essentially coming down from the numbers that we spoke about. If you are skipping your forecast, or that's probably the most important step in the whole thing. If you're not doing that scenario building, or not doing that 13-week forecast, then this entire cascade is going to stop.
Correct.
So
And that's a caveat
these are
that
the
you
top of
mentioned,
the
right?
range, correct?
Part
The
of
top
the,
of the
like, it's
range
a 50
numbers.
crore revenue MSME at 6% operating margin. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Let's move on.
All right. So it's time to end. I know the last slide is basically some summaries that we have already covered.
Yeah.
Um, I
And
don't.
it's essentially a choice that you have to make as listeners, as
Correct.
business owners. Do you go with the first option, which is just drift along what you are doing today, or do you choose the second option, which is
Exactly.
go at it with a designed plan in mind?
Correct.
Everything that we spoke about.
Yes. All right, everyone. I hope this episode adds value to you, and does actually solve some of your pain points. And we believe that the effort that we put in have actually helped you to realize what is going on in your business. I mean, some of these numbers are a typical number based on our study, but your personal situation may differ, and that's why if you want to discuss any particular issues in your, please do contact us. uh, these are our contact information. This is for Shantanu. You may reach out to him on his consultancy page right here, and the LinkedIn page link is also given. And this is for me as well. I'm currently available on LinkedIn. I'll Okay, my LinkedIn information missing. I'll have to uh, redesign this slide again. But we'll post these slides on our LinkedIn feed, and Shantanu will also put this on YouTube. With all this being said, we would like to hear from you. Please let us know what all the like, how are you liking these episodes? Are we actually talking the things that actually matters to you most? Are we talking the problems that you're actually facing, or we are talking something in the something out of the world? Let us know. We would like to get the feedback from you, and see you next time. Go ahead, Shantanu, the final words. And
Oh, absolutely. No, well said, Aniket. I think why we are so passionately talking about this is because we know Indian MSMEs are going to drive the next 10 years of growth for India. You know,
yes,
there's no two ways about it. I think unless this backbone becomes stronger, um, India is not going to see the kind of growth that they have projected for themselves. You know, to achieve those 6-7% CAGRs in GDP growth, this section of the economy has to fire. You know, this
correct.
engine, MSME engine, has to fire. So, really passionate about your growth as MSMEs, and really passionate. Both of us do want to work on issues that are related to you, your growth, and your well-being. So, as Aniket said, reach out to us. Let's engage on these topics, and comment on the videos, comment on the posts, and let's work together on things that really matter to you, right? So that's it from our end today. All have a good day, a happy week ahead, and talk
Thank
to
you,
you
everyone.
soon.
See you next time. Thank you.
Yes,
Bye.
thank you.